Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just My Stupid Opinion. I'm Adrian Lloyd, and today just doing a bit of coverage of the Maclean's debate that ended up taking place a couple days ago on September 12th, and what ended up happening in there. So, of course, Justin Trudeau refused to show up to the debate. He ended up being in like Edmonton or something, campaigning in a riding that he was trying to take back from the NDP in this upcoming election. When it comes to a leader who is unwilling to show up for a debate, it sort of shows a weakness on their part, because a leader who is proud of their record, a leader who has done a good job and is prepared to stand in front of the opposition and defend that record would have no problem showing up to the debates. But Justin Trudeau isn't doing that. Justin Trudeau is willingly running away from these debates, which shows cowardice on his part, but not just his part, the part of the Liberal Party. See, one thing that this guy, the moderator, Paul Wells, ended up saying right off the start is he more or less was saying, like, it's not a big deal because we in Canada elect parties. We don't elect leaders like in the U.S., like talking about the presidential races. But the thing is the leader of the party represents the entire party. It's like the CEO of a company. They are the face of that company, and their words are the words of that company. And it's the exact same thing when it's the leader of a political party. But now it's actually it's more significant, because these are people who are going to lead our country. So when you're willing to show up for a debate and face the challenges where people believe you've done wrong, and also stand up for yourself where you believe you've done well, it just issues a huge amount of cowardice on both the party and its leaders. So no surprise that Justin Trudeau didn't show up. He's a weak leader, and he's just proving it right now. So the debate itself was pretty uneventful. It's actually pretty boring, because it was, of course, it's very formulated, but they didn't talk about what I would consider to be a lot of the big issues. They didn't talk about the current banking situation. Immigration didn't really come up at all. They were talking about they decided to talk about the economy. They talked about Indigenous people. They talked about Bill 21 in Quebec and yada, yada, yada. But the thing was, too, is most of these three leaders ended up just sticking to classic talking points, if you want me. Andrew Scheer with Conservatives are going to make tax cuts, put more money in your pocket. And Jagmeet Singh talking about how, these tax cuts just benefit the top wealthiest 1%, trying to pull like a Canadian version of Bernie Sanders or something like that. And this is something that he repeated that for, I swear, it was probably the first 5 to 7 minutes of the debate. That's all he was trying to bring up. Elizabeth May, you know what, though? Credit to her, she didn't do nearly as bad as I thought she was going to do, but I still would not want to see an Elizabeth May Green Party as the leader of this country. Not that we will. But to her credit, she actually seemed very knowledgeable and well-researched, so when she wanted to attack one of the other two on a certain topic, she was very effective at it. But the problem I have is that the NDP and the Greens, but I'm going to focus more on the Greens right now, they have these big plans for how they want to make life more affordable, quote unquote, for Canadians, but it requires a lot of spending. And as much as they might think that they've done it, they have not offsetted how they would manage to do that. So, for instance, Elizabeth May was talking about how she wanted to pretty much provide a universal basic income for all Canadians. But and that would cost about $40 billion or so in order to do so annually. So where are you going to get the $40 billion in order to offset this? And she doesn't really have much of a plan. She talks about how they're going to live within their means, and we're going to allocate money to pay down the debt and then give the rest of the money back to the Canadian people. But the one of the big problems that she has right now is that one of our most financially precious resources, the oil coming that's flowing from Alberta, this resource is not getting used, and it's not going to get used by Elizabeth May. So she wants to come out here and promise the moon and more to all Canadians, but she has no real way of paying for it. She wants to move off of fossil fuels and go to green energy. She's actually in favor of a carbon tax in order to in order to try and reduce fossil fuel emissions. She also is she also, one thing, I don't know, I can't remember if she actually said in the debate, but I got steered during the debate to this here. Vision Green is sort of their it's their what they're planning on doing for the upcoming election should they win. On there, they're talking about how they're going to put on they're pretty much going to adjust border rates. You know what? I can pull it up real quick just to be safe. That way I'm not trying to talk out of my ass about it. Where is it? Oh, maybe back up here. Here it is. Apply border adjustments to ensure Canadian businesses do not face unfair competition from polluting jurisdictions. In order to maintain a level playing field for a Canadian business with respect to foreign competitors, carbon-based tariffs will be introduced against countries that apply no carbon tax or other equivalent mechanisms to curb GHG emissions, or apply a low rate of carbon tax than Canada. So the problem with this, though, is that now you're going to start raising duties, you're going to raise tariffs on all these countries that are trying to do trade with us, which is going to make it more difficult for us to actually, for them to actually do business with us, which means they're probably not going to do nearly as much business with us. And the thing is, too, I mean, it's a little ironic for President Trump to be, complaining about tariffs as well, because he's put enough on to Canada. So he's kind of just as guilty of what he accuses us to do. But this was one of his main arguments when he was talking about NAFTA, is he was saying that that we're supposed to be about a free trade, but this is unfair to us because he's put all these tariffs onto your dairy or your steel, whatever it happens to be. But now they're saying we're going to put these tariffs on simply because of you don't have a carbon tax. So that's not really going to benefit Canada. So she doesn't want to use one of our most precious resources. She doesn't. She's going to put more tariffs on the Canadian border, so that way it's more difficult in order for other countries to do trade with us, other business owners to do trade with us, which means they're probably going to not bother nearly as much. So where is this money going to be coming from? That's the answer. That's what she needs to answer. But she did touch on it. I think it's over here. So she says here, they say here, Canada's debt is over $600 billion. It's actually more than that. The reason that it's lowered is because they take into consideration government assets, which they own. But if you're taking out government assets, which pretty much means you could sell those off in order to make a profit, then we're actually looking more closer to $1 trillion in debt. The cost of servicing the debt, as discussed, will be approximately $40 billion in the next 5 years. Our government pays over $100 in interest every day. That debt burden drains support from essential government programs. Imagine what $40 billion could do to alleviate poverty and provide affordable housing and affordable post-secondary education. But again, she doesn't really have a plan in order to do this. She's talking about how she's going to balance the budget. It's 2 fucking points. Ensure we do not transfer the deficit from our financial statements to our bridges, waterworks, and other critical infrastructure needs. Set a disciplined schedule to gradually pay down the debt while maintaining public services and programs that meet immediate social and environmental needs, increasing debt reduction over time, but starting with modest targets to permit investment in critical programs. So this is a differently worded way in which she's kind of promising the same thing Trudeau did 4 years ago. They're going to, that they're planning to balance the budget, although she's talking more about the debt here. There's a difference between the two. But the point is that they're going to pretty much spend money, and in order to not lower spending, they're going to spend money, and then they're going to try and use the whatever they make from our GDP to try and pay down the debt. But they're saying, well, this will take time. This is exactly the same sort of talk that that Justin Trudeau did when he was promising 3 years of deficits, and then he balanced the budget on the force, which did not happen and has in fact been devastating to us. So I don't know how she wants to pay this off, because the problem is too right now is that when it comes to how our debt, it's going to take not a couple of years, it's going to take decades in order to actually, if you were consistent, in order to get this completely paid off. So for her to have this idea of being able to implement this by paying down our debt and lower the interest fees that we end up paying on our debt, that is incredibly optimistic. However, the one thing I did see in this report here, this what she submitted to the Parliamentary Budget Office, it's a case of you're so close yet so far at the same time. But I did want to give a little, at least she's actually talking about this. The Greens actually did at least brought this up, but it's not a main talking point for them right now, and it's important. It says, being indebted to external creditors also makes our political decisions makers vulnerable to pressures from outside our country. The 1994 International Monetary Fund report to Canada recommended that our government reduce the number of hospital beds, convert student bursaries to interest-bearing student loans, and cut funding to the National Film Board, the CBC, and Via Rail. The government of the day implemented all these cuts. Canadians lost 10% of our hospital beds the following year, and today we have a wait time crisis in our healthcare system. If we had no debt, we would no longer be beholden to the IMF and global crediting rating agencies. So she's absolutely, this is right when she's talking about the International Monetary Fund. There's borrowing from the private banks, but she doesn't touch on any of these things. She just says, oh, you know what? We just owe money to the IMF, so let's pay that down so we don't owe the IMF. But she's not talking about what is so important, which is that we are being screwed by these bankers. We're being screwed in order to kept into a state of financial slavery. She was so close with this, and yet so far at the same time. This is exactly what they want. Is it any coincidence that the exact same thing is happening in different countries all over the world? Everyone is in a huge amount of debt, but then at the same time, she talks about wanting to pay down the debt, but she wants to introduce a pharmacare plan. She wants to, so does Jagmeet Singh, and his plan was literally to implement it within the first year of him in office. So that would literally be no plan, because you're just going to throw a shit ton of money into people for their drugs without finding some way to offset it. So you can already see how the NDP do not have a financial plan. But then she wants to implement that. She wants to give everybody their universal basic income, and she wants to phase out of fossil fuel. So how is this going to be paid for? That's my big question with everything in this debate, is how is this going to be paid for? But then when it came to Andrew Scheer, he stuck to his talking points too, because he talked about tax cuts, putting more money in your pocket, and Justin Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, Justin Trudeau. So there really wasn't much that you missed if you didn't watch this debate. You didn't really get a better idea of how they're going to do better for the country. Because the thing is too, is that there were from all three of these candidates, there was a lot of evasions of questions. They would be asked something, and they, do their political ballet in order to dance around the question without actually answering it. So, I don't know. Personally, I think that we kind of deserve better than these three clowns and the two other clowns that are out there right now. Although I will say that if Justin Trudeau dropped out of this debate, they should have put Maxime Bernier into this debate. I would have been at least curious to see what he had to say, if he was any different, if he was going to continue with the political ballet, whether he answered the questions, whether he would be frank and direct about the problems that we're facing here in Canada. I would have loved to have seen him in the debate, but especially since Justin Trudeau dropped out, they got a spot they could fill. And it was actually kind of funny because I found that Paul Wells did take a couple shots at him. Because, you can see here, they left his podium there, even though they knew he was not going to be showing up. So it's symbolizing, it's just symbolizing everything wrong with the Trudeau government right now. But he also kind of said this off the start.
The 2019 election campaign is underway. In a world of constant surprise and deepening uncertainty, Canadians will elect a new parliament on October 21st. And tonight, Maclean's and City TV are bringing you the first national leaders debate of the 2019 campaign, now with 25% fewer leaders. We've invited the leaders of the same four parties we invited the last time you saw me here in 2015. 3 of them accepted. Elizabeth May, the leader of the Green Party; Andrew Scheer, leader of the Conservative Party; and Jagmeet Singh, leader of the New Democratic Party. We also invited Justin Trudeau, the leader of the Liberal Party. He declined, which is absolutely his right. We left the invitation and his podium open right up to airtime.
So I did kind of like that because it was a bit of a slap to the face to Justin Trudeau, what he ended up doing when he says that now with 25% less leaders, and also the fact that they left their podium up there. And I think that Trudeau is going to do more damage to himself by not showing up to these debates, because people are going to see this. People are going to see that he's absent, and then he has to run on him being an effective leader and being there for the country. Well, apparently the guy couldn't come to a friggin' debate. So this is going to be, not to mention that as soon as he does show up to one of the 2 debates out of, I think, the 5 or 6 that they're planning, he's going to get roasted. He's going to get torn apart by the other 3 parties, the party leaders who have been there and there to answer their questions, there to put their ideas on the table. And then Justin Trudeau also doesn't have nearly as much time to defend his record. The problem is, and I understand why they ended up doing this, is because Justin Trudeau is only good in front of a camera if he's running on a script. If he's not running on a script, then he is absolutely horrible. When he has to freestyle, when he's got to talk to the press and they ask him a question and he's not prepared for it, or he's answering questions in the House of Commons and he doesn't have his paper in front of him, this is where his stupidity comes out. This is where the memes come out. So this is why they're not putting him in front of the camera, or putting him in front of the camera in these debates as little as possible. Don't forget, this is the guy who got caught off guard about what he's doing to reduce his family's doing to reduce their use on single-use plastic, and he stumbled over his words and settled on drink box type things. So this is why they're not putting him in front of the camera. So not really much of an interest in this debate. You didn't miss much if you ended up skipping it. I think that one of the better debates will be one, at least, where Justin Trudeau shows up, because then we'll have a good back and forth and we'll be able to get a better idea compared to what Trudeau has done. Compared to that, then all these parties can better put out how they would handle situations different and what their plans are for the future. But again, this one was just a lot of political ballet, interrupting each other, and talking points. That's all it was. They kept repeating the same thing over and over. Alright, I think that's all I got for you all today. If you stuck around to the end, then I'm also will be releasing a video in the next day or 2. I'm just about halfway done through the editing process, so I'll have something coming up for you guys soon. Take care.